Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the B segment of episode 33 of Codename Kids Next Door, Operation Castle. We begin this segment outside of what seems to be a castle, and the guards outside of this castle are rendered unconscious by a 2x4 technology condiment explosive known as the roller skate. After the guards are rendered unconscious, 4 of the 5 Sector V operatives proceed to enter the castle, and soon enough they come across Number 3 and her younger sister Mushi, who are sitting in a boat in the middle of a straightforward water pathway. Number 1 inquires Number 3 about her reason for contacting them using the Kids Next Door super alert. And Number 3 responds that the rest of the Sector V operatives are just in time for the ride. Yes, that's right. This castle is actually part of a ride within the Rainbow Monkey Happy Sugarland theme park. Naturally, the other Sector V operatives are quite irritated that Number 3 used the Kids Next Door super alert to invite them to partake on a theme park ride. And Number 1 in particular stresses that the Kids Next Door super alert is intended for emergencies only. After a brief argument, the rest of the Sector V operatives decide to leave the theme park, while Number 3 decides to stay with Mushi and partake on this particular ride. So after the rest of the Sector V operatives leave, the ride begins. Number 3 and Mushi are sitting in the boat as it's moving along the water pathway, and as the boat is moving along this water pathway, the Sanban sisters see animatronics that tell the Romeo and Juliet story. Although this is a Rainbow Monkeys adaptation of the Romeo and Juliet play. And yes, the Rainbow Monkey adaptation has a much happier ending compared to the original William Shakespeare play. Suddenly, at one point during the ride, 2 of the animatronics attack the Sanban sisters, but Number 3 is able to jump out of the way of the attacks and jump onto the boat behind her and Mushi. She's also carrying Mushi, so her younger sister is safe as well. Soon enough, though, it's revealed that these 2 animatronics are not actually animatronics. In truth, they are actually 2 members of the Knights of the Round Towel. The Knights of the Round Towel explain that King Sandy has sent them to search far and wide for the fair princess that he wishes to marry, and Mushi gets excited hearing talk about a wedding between her older sister and a king, but Number 3 says that it's a long story before she activates the motor part of the boat so that the Sanban sisters can speed past the knights. The 3rd knight appears in a different boat, and the 2 other knights join him on this boat as they chase after the Sanban sisters. Number 3 tries to explain to Mushi that King Sandy is actually a younger kid who is delusional enough to think that he's an actual king, and delusional enough to think that he can actually marry Number 3. But Mushi seems to be caught up in all the wedding talk because she doesn't seem to be paying attention to what Number 3 is trying to explain to her. Number 3 uses the Kids Next Door super alert to contact her teammates for help. However, Number 1 believes that Number 3 is just using the super alert for another mundane reason like earlier. The fact that Mushi is talking about a wedding with a lot of excitement does not help Number 3's case. So Number 1 hangs up on Number 3. Realizing that they need more proof to convince her teammates that this is an actual emergency, Number 3 instructs Mushi to find the other Sector V operatives and bring them back so they can help out with dealing with King Sandy and the Knights of the Round Towel. Mushi continues to talk about preparations for a wedding with a lot of excitement, but number 3 is able to launch Mushi out of the boat so that she can go find the other Sector V operatives. Eventually, the ride leads to a very crazy water slide part. That's the best way I can think to describe it. It turns into a water slide with a lot of crazy twists and turns. And eventually there's a central chamber where there's a hole in the middle and different water slide pathways. That's the best way I can think to describe it. But eventually the boat that number 3 is in launches out of the water slide that she was on, and it starts to fall down the bottom of this hole in the middle of this chamber. But number 3 loses consciousness during the fall. Eventually, number 3 regains consciousness, and she finds herself in a dungeon, the dungeon part of this castle, naturally. But she also sees that several Rainbow Monkey toys are also prisoners within this dungeon, and she can't help but wonder who could do something like this. Soon enough, the door to the dungeon opens up, and the Knights of the Round Towel enter the dungeon, and King Sandy enters as well. King Sandy admits that he's the one responsible for imprisoning these Rainbow Monkey toys, and he says that he intends to have no one interfere with his perfect wedding with who he considers to be the most beautiful princess. Number 3 is flattered by King Sandy's compliments towards her, but she is still adamant about not marrying King Sandy, and very adamant about not playing along with his delusional belief that he's a king. King Sandy gets irritated when number 3 says that he's pretending, and he recites how he never pretends, and then he reveals his ultimate blackmail against number 3, or his ultimate blackmail to force number 3 to marry him. He reveals that there's a net, and it's filled with Rainbow Monkey toys, and the net is hanging over a tank of boiling hot nacho cheese, and King Sandy threatens to drop the net into the tank unless number 3 agrees to marry him. Eventually, number 3 agrees to marry King Sandy as long as the Rainbow Monkeys are not harmed, and King Sandy assures number 3 that they won't be harmed, and he instructs the Knights of the Round Towel to make preparations for the wedding. Out in the main part of the Rainbow Monkey Happy Sugarland theme park, Mushi does eventually find the other Sector V operatives, and she tries to convince them to come with her to the wedding. However, the other Sector V operatives still believe that this isn't an actual emergency, and they brush off Mushi's requests. So Mushi grumbles to herself about how she'll go see the wedding between number 3 and King Sandy by herself. And it's the mention of King Sandy's name that gets the attention of the other Sector V operatives, including number 1, suggesting that number 1 was told about King Sandy by the rest of his teammates after the events of Operation Beach. And so the other Sector V operatives realize that this is an emergency, and they rush off to help number 3. Back at the castle, we see that the lifeguard from Operation Beach has returned, and he's holding the ceremony for the wedding between King Sandy and number 3. However, the ceremony is interrupted when Mushi arrives in a boat, and she comments about she's still reflecting on the Rainbow Monkeys adaptation of the Romeo and Juliet play. And when Mushi comments about the pretend story, this angers King Sandy, who once again recites that King Sandy never pretends. And this leads to Mushi actually saying something that number 3 said back in Operation Beach. The fact that number 3 can't actually get married because she's only 10 years old. King Sandy, though, is angered by this, and he orders the Knights of the Round Towel to capture Mushi. But Mushi is able to avoid the Knights of the Round Towel by activating the motor part of the boat. And Mushi is able to time the location of the boat so number 3 can jump onto the boat. But King Sandy is still determined as ever, and he jumps after the Sanban sisters. King Sandy is able to make it onto the boat that the Sanban sisters are on, and he turns Mushi around to face him as he confronts the wedding crasher, as he describes Mushi. But when he gets a good look at Mushi's face, King Sandy takes an immediate liking to Mushi. Mushi is flattered by King Sandy's compliments, especially after King Sandy describes Mushi as the most beautiful of princesses, and number 3 does not like this. Number 3 gets more irritated when Mushi comments about how she is much cuter than her older sister, and number 3 gets even more irritated when King Sandy refers to number 3 as Granny. But before anything else can happen, the boat reaches the crazy water slide part of the ride, and this time the boat actually crashes through one of the walls of the castle. So the boat ends up landing somewhere in the middle of the Rainbow Monkey Happy Sugar Land theme park, and the rest of the Sector V operatives arrive to confront King Sandy. But suddenly, King Sandy's mom actually calls for him from off screen. So we don't actually see Sandy's mom, but we do hear her voice. And Sandy's mom tells Sandy that it's time for lunch. Sandy requests if he can bring Mushi to join them. He refers to Mushi as his new pretty girlfriend, which irritates number 3. Sandy's mom is more than happy to have Mushi join them, and she also adds that Sandy's cousins should be informed about it being lunchtime as well. And we do see, the Knights of the Round Towel are excited that it's time for lunch. So King Sandy, the Knights of the Round Towel, and Mushi all head off to where Sandy's mom is to begin lunchtime. And number 2 comments to his other teammates. Number 2 says in his words that King Sandy has a weird taste in girls. Number 3 does not like this, and she actually grabs the splanker that number 2 is holding and hits number 2 with the splanker. And although the scene goes dark at this point, the screen goes dark at this point, but we also hear number 4 use his splanker on number 2, and that's how we end this segment. So this segment is not only a number 3 spotlight appearance, but it's also the first season 3 appearance of Mushi Sanban, number 3's younger sister, and it's the first season 3 appearance of King Sandy and the Knights of the Round Towel. King Sandy being the villain that most fans would consider number 3's arch enemy. Although King Sandy no longer would be considered number 3's arch enemy by the end of this segment, because King Sandy now has taken a liking to Mushi, and Mushi has also taken a liking to King Sandy. And most fans would notice that King Sandy and Mushi look to be about the same age. And I might as well mention this now actually, but for this particular, this is the last segment where King Sandy plays a major role in, or this is the last segment or entry where King Sandy is the focus villain of the entry. So he does make at least 2 more appearances within the series, but they're both cameo appearances. He's not the focus villain of those other entries. But there is a comics issue where King Sandy does get to play a major role in it. But that comics issue also reveals, that also deals with a significant revelation that happens in a later entry. So I won't go into too much detail about this comics issue just yet. We will cross that bridge eventually, but after we go over we'll bring it up when we go over the recap and thoughts video for the entry that includes the big revelation that I'm referring to. I trust that viewers will know which entry I'm talking about when we eventually cover that particular entry. Or if you've already watched the series, then I'm sure you know which entry I'm talking about. Now, Mushi, on the other hand, yes, Mushi actually does go on to have some other major appearances after Operation K.A.S.T.L.E. And actually, there's an entry in Season 4 that is very important with regards to Mushi's character. I don't want to give too much away for the sake of those who are just following along with the recap and thoughts video, but yes, you can be assured that we will cross that bridge when we eventually get to it. So yes, Mushi will go on to have more major appearances later on in the series, while King Sandy will have at least two more cameos. Yes, King Sandy will have two more cameos within the series itself later on. So otherwise, I don't know if there really is too much else to talk about for this particular entry. But yeah, Rainbow Monkey theme parks. Yes, if it's not the exact same theme park, there actually is another entry that relates, or actually maybe a few other entries. Yeah, there's at least a few other entries I'm thinking of that also relate to Rainbow Monkey theme parks, if they're not the same theme park as the one in this segment. But yes, you can expect to see more Rainbow Monkey theme park related situations in later entries of the series. So we'll cross those bridges when we eventually get to them. But otherwise, yeah, I believe that's it for this particular segment. So as of this video, we've now discussed the B segment of episode 33 of Codename Kids Next Door on this channel. Take care, and until next time,